My childhood friend went missing 12 years ago. I just found his body buried in my backyard. I was 8 years old when my best friend Tommy disappeared from my backyard during a sleepover. The police searched for weeks but never found any trace of him. His family moved away after 6 months, unable to cope with not knowing what happened. For 12 years, I've had nightmares about that night, but I could never remember exactly what happened. Yesterday, I was digging a hole to plant a tree when my shovel hit something hard about 4 feet down. What I uncovered made me vomit instantly. It was a small skeleton wearing a faded red t-shirt, the same shirt Tommy had been wearing the night he vanished. I called the police immediately, but while waiting for them to arrive, I noticed something strange about the burial site. The bones were arranged in a perfect circle, with strange symbols carved into the surrounding dirt. It didn't look like a random burial. It looked ritualistic. When Detective Morrison arrived, he examined the scene and seemed more disturbed by the symbols than surprised by finding a body. "Have you ever noticed anything unusual about your property?" he asked me. "Any strange occurrences, unexplained sounds, things like that?" I told him about the nightmares I'd been having since childhood, dreams where I saw a tall, shadowy figure standing in our backyard, calling children's names in a voice that sounded like wind through dead leaves. Detective Morrison pulled out an old file folder. "Your property has a history," he said grimly. "We've had reports of missing children in this area going back over 100 years. All the disappearances happen on properties along this street, and they always involve kids between the ages of 7 and 10. He showed me newspaper clippings dating back to 1923. Every 12 years, like clockwork, a child would disappear from somewhere on our street. The pattern was so consistent, it couldn't be coincident. Tommy's disappearance was exactly 12 years ago, which meant another child was due to vanish soon. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I saw something that made my blood freeze. A tall, dark figure was standing in my backyard, exactly like in my nightmare. It was at least 8 feet tall, with arms that stretched down to the ground, and where its face should be was just empty darkness. I watched in horror as the figure moved toward my neighbor's house, where the Hendersons lived with their 9-year-old daughter, Maya. The figure stopped at their back fence and seemed to be calling her name, though I couldn't hear any sound. Maya's bedroom light turned on, and I saw her small silhouette appear at her window. She opened it and climbed out onto the roof, then jumped down into her backyard like she was sleepwalking. She started walking toward the dark figure with her arms outstretched. I ran outside and shouted, "Maya, stop," but she didn't respond. When I got closer, I could hear the thing making a sound like wind howling through a tunnel. I grabbed Maya's arm and shook her hard. She blinked and looked around, confused. "What am I doing outside?" she asked. The dark figure had vanished the moment I touched her. The next day, I researched the history of our street at the local library. What I found made everything clear. Our neighborhood was built on land that used to be a Native American burial ground. According to historical documents, the tribe had sealed away a malevolent spirit called the Hungry Shadow that fed on the life force of children. The documents described how the spirit required a child sacrifice every 12 years to remain dormant. If it didn't receive its offering, it would grow stronger and start taking multiple children. The burial ritual had to be performed in a specific way, with the victim placed in a circle of symbols to bind the spirit for another 12-year cycle. I realized that my family had been the guardians of this secret for generations. My parents had fed Tommy to the entity to keep it satisfied, just like their parents had done before them. But I also discovered that the spirit's power was growing weaker with each sacrifice. The 12-year cycles were originally meant to eventually starve it to death, but only if the guardians stopped feeding it willingly. That night, I felt the presence in my backyard again. The dark figure was standing over Tommy's grave, and I could hear it whispering my name. When I looked out the window, it pointed at Maya's house, then back at the burial site. It was giving me an ultimatum: feed it the Henderson girl, or face its wrath. I made my decision. I went outside and walked toward the entity. "I'm not giving you another child," I said. "The cycle ends with me." The figure let out a shriek that shattered every window on our street. It began to grow larger, its shadow stretching across the entire backyard. I could feel it reaching into my mind, trying to drain my life force. But then Tommy's spirit rose from the burial site and stood between me and the creature. "You took enough from us," Tommy's voice whispered. "No more children." The spirits of all the sacrificed children began to appear, forming a circle around the dark entity. They grabbed onto it with their small hands and started pulling it down into the earth. The creature fought back, but it was outnumbered by decades of victims. As the entity was dragged back into the ground, the burial symbols began to glow and then crumble away. Tommy's spirit looked at me one last time before fading away. "Thank you for remembering," he said. "The nightmare is finally over."